So now, before we continue the JavaScript, what I will do is that I'm going to remove this, right? I'm going to remove these tasks that we just created. It's not part of it. Remember, I just did it. I did that simply because of CSS. So I can come here and remove the, or you can comment it or delete it. It will be dirty. Make your work dirty, remove it, and we have this, right? You can see it's not there. So the next thing we are going to do, the first thing of course in JavaScript, is to target all what we need in the HTML, right? So of course, what are those things we need? We need this input field, we need this button, we need this input field for search, and we need this task list. So all these ones will be stored in a variable. Each of them will have a variable, and of course you know what a variable is. A variable is actually where a specific data is being stored. So when I have, so now let's get our variable. So get the variables. So the first variable here is actually our arrow. So let's say const arrow. You can give it any name, but not any reserved word that JavaScript is already using. So we said arrow is equal to. So how we're going to target an element from the DOM? Of course, there is what we call get element by ID. If it is an ID, of course, this is a class name. So if you use get element by ID, it's not going to target it. Then we can use get element by class name. Of course, it's another way of targeting an element in HTML. We can use get element by, we have query selector, right? Document.query selector, and in using query selector, if it is a class name, you use dot, and if it is an ID, you use hash, just like the way you do in CSS. So we're going to use query selector since the arrow here is actually what? It's actually a class. So let me just use document. Why are we using document? Remember, we are dealing with document object model. Everything on the DOM is document. So document.query selector, and remember it's a class, we use dot. Now we have arrow, right? Then the next one is our input task. We didn't give it a class name or an ID, so let me give it an ID. Call it input dash task, right? So we have an ID here. So let's use, you can use get element by ID or query selector. If you use, let me say input task, I'm using camel case here. Then the camel case is a structure that you know the way camel is, right? And so beginning of every word you use capital letter, but you have to start it with small letter. So I'm going to use document get element by ID because it's an ID. So you can actually use query selector, but remember you have to use hash. So document.get element by ID. But since it is already an ID, it's ID, you don't need to put the hash. Just write the ID straight. Then the next thing is our button, right? It's having an ID of add task. So I'm going to say const, I can say add task btn, right? So we'll say it's also an ID. I can choose to use query selector here, query selector, and we use the hash, right? Because it's an ID. Then the next thing is our input search, which is also using an ID of search input. So let's do something here. I can say input search, right, is equals to document. Guess it. What I'm going to use, anyone you choose is fine. So let me just say dot get element by ID, and it's what search input. Then the next thing is you can see I actually have an extension that underline wrong spellings. You know, it's always very hard if you are already used to all this Grammarly, you're used to Microsoft Word. Whenever you have a wrong spelling, of course it's going to underline, but when you are doing that in programming, it's always very hard. So I got an extension, and that extension, you see, if I hover on it and click on it, it's going to fix it. Search. So that means we have to go back to this place and add search here. So that it's an extension. Spelling checker, I think it's spelling checker. Let me see. Was it spelling? Let me check. Should be spelling something good. See there. Code spell checker. Very, very important. It's very nice whenever you you are writing, you have a error, typographical error, it simply corrects you underline it. All right, so search input. Then the second to the last, rather, what we're going to target is actually where most of our dirty work will be. That's the task list. So I can just say const. What did I use? Was it an ID or it was a class? So I can just say there's a task items, or say task list. Task list is equals to document dot query selector, and I think it's class, right? So we use class. We got this. Then lastly, we have clear all, right? Clear all btn. So just say clear all btn here. I'm going to rename it using my JavaScript. So const, say clear all btn is equals to document dot. So what did we use? Was it an ID or class name? That's class name. So I'll just say query selector, and we have this. Good. So if we want to be sure that all these things has, so you can see this one, this is, can you see it's underlining that the spelling is wrong? Let me hover on it. Fix. It's a clear. Good. We have this. Great. So you can see it actually makes things a little bit easier. So now I want to check whether we've targeted all our HTML that we will need. So let's log all of them to the console. We can say error. Remember that the error itself is actually not there. We have input task. We have the next one is add task btn. Then we have, so the next is we have input search. Yes. Then we have task list, and clear all btn. So let's check our browser. This was crazy things, very long, right? So let's check it out. Great. Let's see, we have the P, which is, you can see it here. We've targeted it, but even though you will not see it in the UI. Why? In the DOM, simply because it's displayed on. So we have our input alias. You hover over it. We have add task. We have search task. We have the UL, which has nothing there. Yes, there's nothing there, but you can see it here. Then we have clear all tasks. Then that means we've targeted all our HTML elements correctly. So we are now ready to start the JavaScript. All right, let's see. So what I usually do is I will write all the steps I need. It actually helps me to make my things very, very clean and organized. So now what are we going to do? Of course, the first thing we're going to add a task. Then the next thing, we should be able to edit the task. Then what again? We should be able to delete a task. Next is what? Delete all tasks. Delete all tasks. Then finally we should be able to search a task. So now we have these are the things we are going to do. This is basically the CRUD operation. Then under the add task, what are some of these things I'm going to do? I'm going to write the steps also, so that we're going to follow them one after the other. So the first thing, of course, we're going to get here. Let me use this. Yes, this is another extension I'm using that will be able to color for. I've forgotten the name of this extension. What is it? I'll check it. Let me check it and see. What are those extensions I apply? Let me see. Color. I've forgotten the name. I think. Is it this? No. Not this one. Nope. Yes, I've forgotten the name actually. I don't know. It's been long though. So yeah. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our input value, and after getting the input value, what I'm going to do, get the input value and trim it. What is trimming? I'm going to explain the meaning of trimming. When you trim something, of course you are trying to, let me close this, you're trying to remove the white space. So now imagine if I have something like this. What happened? This search task should be able to, I think I gave it a margin, right? Then what is this thing doing here? It's making it somehow. Let me see it. Search. Oh, sorry, because I actually edited the name. I didn't edit it here, so sorry about that. Let me see. Now I'm back. Good. So now, if I will write something like this and add, if I will write something like this, it is good. But sometimes you may be able to. Some people might have space like this and start writing. If you do not remove this white space, it's going to actually add it with the white space. JavaScript is going to count it as text. So now what I'm going to do is that we're going to remove the white space, so that whenever you click, it will remove all the spaces and only the space between words will be allowed. So we're going to, that's how I said we are going to get the input field, the value, and trim it. So after doing that, what I'm going to do next, of course, we are going to create an li. Remember that we have a ul here. So let me remove this. We have a ul here, and the ul is empty. So we're going to put in the li inside, and that li, remember I told you that it contains three things: the input field, the delete button, and the edit button. So that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to create what? Create a new what? Li. So after creating the new Li, then we're going to also create an input field. We'll create an input field. An input field, and after creating the input field, that input field should have what would that input field have? It should be a type of text. Yes, a type of text. See me? Type of text. Then it should be disabled. Remember? Then also it will have a class name of what? We'll give it a class name because later on we're going to actually use it. Class name of disabled task. Let's just make it like disabled task. Right? Then what's the next thing? After creating an input field text, then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to append. Right? When I say append, we're going to merge. We'll carry this value and put it inside the input field. So we'll just say, let me just use put the input value, or put the input trimmed value, right, into the disabled task input. So that's what we're going to do. Why is this incomplete? Let me see. Oh, it's double M. So now we're going to put it there. After putting it there, what we're going to do, we're going to now append our li, right, to the input field. We'll just carry the input field, that input field, this disabled input field, and now append it to the li. So once next thing is what? Say put. I just want to use a normal English word. I don't want to use append. Later I'm going to say put the input field, right, that contain the task, right, into the what? Into the new li. That's what we're going to do. We're going to put in there. So after doing that, what I'm going to do, well, of course, at this point we're going to create the button, the delete button. So we create the what? Create the delete btn, and what? Give it a class, and give it a class, and give it a class. Let me use like this. Class of what? Class of delete btn, right? We're going to do it. After doing that, then we're going to actually also append that specific button, right? We'll put the button, put the delete btn into the li2. So that li that has the input field that now is going to be together with the li with the delete button too. Then the next thing is we're going to also create an edit button, right? So we have something we said create an edit btn with what? Class of what? Edit btn. Then the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to put the edit btn into the li2, right? And after doing that, what I'm going to do, the last thing under this, of course, we're going to carry this li, put the li into the task what list. So put the new li that got what? That contains all the information into the task list. So you can see, after writing all these steps, like I've already explained everything. Yes, so that's how it is. It makes things very easy and well organized. So now let's go into it. So how are we going to get the input field? Of course, it's very easy. You can basically give it a class, a name. Let's say a text, right? So let's give it a name text. So we say const task text, because the text we're going to get from the input field. So now how are we going to get the we're going to say what? We're going to say, remember that is in this input field, right? This input task. So we're going to say is equals to input task, right? And what do we need? We need dot the value. And after the value, now we want to trim it, right? We want to trim it. Dot value dot what? Trim. So if we call this function like this, trim is actually going to remove all the white space from our input field. It's going to only give us the text. If it is a sentence, any white space before. So now let's see if I have let me log this to the console, CLG, and I have task text, right? So let's see. So we have the steps here, but remember, these steps can only take place when you click on add a task. So that means all these things now will happen under add task, and this add task we are going to we're going to actually attach an event listener to it. So whenever you click, then all these things will take place. So now that means the most important thing here is here. Where is the question mark? You can see another one here is click on add task. So when you click on add task, then all this code should be executed. So now let's see how we're going to do. We're going to attach an event listener on this add task button. So now let's see. We're going to say add task button btn dot add event listener. So we have this. I can basically do two things. Of course, what's the name of our event is click. There are different types of events. We have mouse in, we have mouse out, mouse over, we have key up, key down, and so on. There are a lot of them. You can go through the documentation or search it, you Google it, you get it. So now there are two ways of I can handle this. I can actually do it like this, and I will give it a function name. Let me just say add task function. I just give it a name, right? Then I can actually just copy this function name, write it, and give it. This one is a callback function. Then I will create a function with it. I will just say function, right? Just say function, and the name of the function will now be the add task function. Then we have something like this. Then I will do what I want to do inside here. So whatever I do here, whenever I click on this button, then it will take place. Let me just say CLG, that's log. Let me say hello, so that will see hello, right? So if I will click, you should be able to, but you may likely see a weird behavior now. Can you see it flash it? But there's problem, it flash. So what are we going to do? Whenever you click, you notice the browser get refreshed. So what I want to do, of course, yes, that's the default behavior of the button. So I can just give it there is a parameter. Since it's a function, anything we write inside this curly braces is either called a parameter or an argument. So I'll give it a parameter of event. This event has a lot of methods on it, a lot. In fact, you can check the methods. I can say one of the methods is actually this event. You can basically give it any name you want. I'll just say e.prevent. I want to prevent the default. Prevent default. Default. So if I will do like this, it's going to let's try it and see. If you click, you can see nothing is happening. The browser is not refreshing. So you can see our hello. So there are a lot of events, a lot of method on this e. So if I would say cld and say e and click, so let me click. Can you see? See, it said pointer event. See, a lot of them. There are a lot. So now this is the first method of adding event listener, right? I can also use the callback function here directly. I'll just use function and like this with curly braces. Then I will just put my event here e, and I will say e dot prevent default. You will still do the same thing. If I will just cld, we'll say hello. I said hello. Hello. So let me check. If you add hello, great, it's working. Another way of doing, if I want to remove the function to make it more cleaner, I can use ES6, right? ES6 arrow function. I'll just say E and just an arrow. I like this because it makes things very neat. Can you see? So it will still give me the same thing. E dot prevent default, and I'll say CLG, say hello. Good. So let me add works. So whichever way you want it, it's okay, right? So far you're going to get your result. So now remember that all these things are going to take place inside this, right? Whenever we click, the first thing we're going to do, of course, we are going to get the value and trim it. So we're going to get the value. So let's get the value here. Of course, if we want to get the value, we can give it a name. We'll say const. Let me give it a name, task text, right? Then how do we do? How going to get the value? Of course, we're going to get it from the input task here, right? So we just say input task, but we are not only interested in the input task, we are interested in the value. Can you see? In the value. But if we get this value, of course, it's okay, it's correct. Let's say CLG, so that you see. Say task text now, because now everything inside this input value is now stored into this variable task text. So now let me check. If I will write hello and add, you see. But what if I will give a space here? Give space here, and I will say hello. Wait and see what will happen. Can you see it's giving space here? And that is what we don't want. This is the white space we're talking about. The space should be after a word, right? I can actually say hello world, right? Hello world. Then add. We don't have problem with the space between the hello and the word, but we have problem when there is space before the word. So what are we going to do? We're going to trim it. That's what we said. Using what? The trim function. So if I will say dot trim, call it as a function, wait and see what will happen now. If I say hello and add, it's okay, right? What if I will give space and say hello and add? You can see it has moved the space, the white space. There's no more white space. So that is what we need. That's the function of this trim. So we are able to trim the white space. The next thing is, of course, we're going to create a new li. So how are we going to do? Remember, we are dealing with the DOM. You can actually create anything from HTML using JavaScript. Anything in HTML using JavaScript, you can do that. So you can just say const our new li, right? Let's just give it a new li equals to what I'm going to do. So we're going to say document. Remember, everything on document now is what? Dot create element. We want to create an element. And what our element do we want to create? We want to create an li. Can you see? Create an li. And we're going to give it a name. Yeah, a class. Of course, we're going to give it a class. And what's the class? The class is, remember that each li represents a task. So we're going to give it a class named task. So we're going to just say the new li, we have new li dot class should be what? The class now, we can give it a class to be task. So we've created our li now. So the next thing is we are going to create an input field of the type text and put it to be, make sure it is disabled, and give it a class name of disabled task. So let me just put like this, disabled task, right? So let's do that. We're going to create the input the same way we created the li. So let's say const. So what will be the variable name? You can just say can we say task input? Did we use task input here? No, this one was input task. Let's say task input. Task input. So now it's equals to now document dot create element. And what are we creating? Of course, we are creating an input because we want to put our text, this task text inside, right? And later on we should be able to edit it. So we are creating an input. And remember, we said that we're going to give it a type. Of course, you can create an attribute. This is an attribute. You can create an attribute for this input field. So what type? We can just say task input, right? Dot type, right? What type? The type should be what? Text. Can you see? And we are going to make sure it is disabled. So we can still say task input dot disabled, and it should be what? It should be true. So it's going to be disabled. We can't be able to edit it. So now we have our input field, and what will be the value of the input? There should be something inside the input. What is that? It should be our what? Trim text. So the text will be inside the input, and the input will be inside the li. So now we can just say task input, right? Dot value. The value should be what? Equals to what? Our task text. Great. So we have it, our task text. Now that's why we can see I think I carried this. Let me just put it under this here, right? So put the input trim value into the disabled text. We just did that. So the next thing is put the input field that contains the task into the li. So there's a method called append. We want to append, or append child. So what I want to append, we're going to append this li. Sorry, we're going to append this input task into the what? New li. Remember that this li now is empty, right? So now just say, how do we do that? We can just say new li dot append child, or append. It will still give you the same thing. So the append child, what do you want to append? Of course, we want to append this task input. we say task input. Great. Very simple, right? So the next thing is actually to create a delete button with the class name of delete btn, right? Let me just put this one, should be btn. Then was there anything? Yeah, we missed one. Was it? Oh, we're supposed to give this input field a name disable task. So we forgot. See there. You will not know the important now, but later on when we start dealing with delete and edit, that's where we'll have issues. So let's give it a class name here. So we can just say task input dot class name is going to be what? Let's just say disabled dash task, right? So now remember, we have already put the value of that input field should be the task text that we have already trimmed from the input field. And now we have append the task input into the li. The next thing is to create a delete button. So we can just say const delete btn. It will be we're going to create it just like the way we created other elements. We say document. What is this? Okay. You can see. It's supposed to be delete. Delete te. So it will be document dot create element. And what is that element? The element is a button, right? And remember, the button should have a what? It should. If I will create this button and I didn't write anything inside, it's just going to be appear as button. But the button should have a text inside. So I didn't write it here. Text of delete. Should be capital delete button. So that's what we want to do. So the first thing, the input text, the text on the button, right? That's the writer on the button should be delete button. So you can just say delete btn dot inner text. Inner text, the text there should be what? Should be delete button, or you can just say delete. Simple. We already know that is a button, right? So you don't need to say delete button. And I want to give the class name. So we said delete button dot class name is equals to what? It should be delete btn. Delete btn. Good. So we've created our button, and the next thing we're going to do is to put the button into the li. And guess what? How we're going to do, of course, is append. So we just say the li, the new li dot append child, because all this one they eat. This btn is a child. Is a child of the li. So what I'm going to append is the delete btn. Great. The next thing is to create an edit btn. So we'll say const edit btn is equals to document dot create element. And what are we creating? Another button, right? So we say button, and the text, we can also give it an inner text. What will appear on the button should, so say edit button should be what? Dot inner text. Remember, see, you have inner HTML and you have inner text. They are two different things. Yes, in some scenarios you may likely get the same result, but they are two different things. This one here is trying to talk about the inner HTML text. If there is any inner HTML tag, it will display it. But this one is particularly being explicit. Text is the text, so inner text should be equals to what? Edit. So let's say capital letter edit, right? Then we should give it a class name too. Class name of, oh sorry, we said edit dot class name. Edit button dot class name should be what? It should be edit btn. Edit btn. Great, we have this. So what I'm going to do, we're going to put the edit button into the li2. So we're going to say the, of course, the what you know as you know it is new li dot append another child. And what is the child? The child is edit button. So we have this. Great, very simple. Now the last thing we're going to do is to put the new li that contains all the information into the task list. So now we're going to say task list. Now remember that the li is now a child of the task list. So dot append child, and what are we appending now is the new li, and you remember that the new li has other things. So with this now, our code should be able to work. We should be able to add a task. So let's give it a try. Let's say eat some food. So let me add, boom, add it. Great. Then you can see something is happening after adding. This is not cleaning. This is what we call a bad user experience. Imagine after doing, human beings now have very short attention span. So now if you do something like this, somebody can basically leave your application simply because it is so annoying, waste of time. You write a task before you wipe it and add another one. So what are we going to do? There's something we can do. Of course, whenever we finish adding the task, we want the input value, right? The task input value here, this input task, the value should be empty. So you can say input task. Let me just add one here. Clear the input task. So let's say input task dot value should be equals to empty. So now it's going to clear everything after adding a task. So let's try it and say eat some food. Can you see? Now clear. Very good. So sing some songs. Good. But now what if I will try to add something? You can see empty things. Can you see? So we forgot to check our condition. This input field should not be empty. So where are we supposed to use our conditionals? Of course, we are supposed to check our conditionals here. So we are supposed to check it here. We say check if the input task is not empty. So that's what we're going to do. We're supposed to do this. So now after doing that, then all this code will enter into that condition that is true. But if not, we're going to display an error. So how are we going to do? You use an if. So say if, an if statement. If what? Then now if, then this is where your condition will enter. If this input task dot value, right, dot value is what? Is not what? Empty. So what is the meaning of this? It's not empty. So then this code here should run. Now what is the meaning of this? This is trying to tell you that this is when you use exclamation. If you say equal to an exclamation here is not, then what will happen here is that it's going to happen. What will happen inside this code block is actually trying to tell you that when this condition is fulfilled, when the input task value is not null, then or empty, then this code block, anything you write here is going to what? Is going to take place. Else, you can actually write else. Then this place what? This one is when the opposite will take the opposite will take place. right? I can actually do this one in another way. This condition, I can just say if this one now is equals to empty, can you see? Then I will put the opposite here, display an arrow here, then they add a task here. You can add a task here, so it depends on how you do it. I can just say, okay, now I have this. So if this one here, if this input field is not empty, then we're going to copy. Let me just this event dot prevent default should be at the top here. Good. So I will copy this, right, cut this up, then I'll put it. If this is not empty, then this will take place. Can you see? So let's try it and see. Let me add it. Can you see? I'm adding, nothing is happening. Hey, do it. Nothing. But if I will write something, hi, it's going to take. Can you see? Added. So you are basically commanding, make sure there's nothing, make sure there's something inside the input field before this code block will run. Else, what do you want us to do? We want to target our arrow now and display. We'll just say, okay, we're going to say else we're going to say arrow. What did we use? Arrow, right? We use error, err. So we say err. Now dot. Remember that in our HTML is present, but in our CSS we make it to be what? To display none. Here is it. See it here, display none. Now we want to display it to be block using JavaScript. So whenever it is there's an arrow, it should be what? Arrow. How we want to display the CSS? We say dot style dot display, and the display should be what? Now it should be block. So if you want to get anything in CSS, after calling the element in JavaScript, then is style, then call style, right? Style, then the property you want to select or you want to change. So now let's try it and see. If I add, can you see? But something is happening. It's not disappearing after 2 seconds. This is another bad user experience. At least if the user after some seconds, it should be able to what? Disappear, right? So now how are we going to do it? There's a method in JavaScript. Use what? The set timeout. We're going to set the timeout. Basically, the meaning of timeout is used to run a certain function after then it will actually go out, or it will run a certain function for a specific time. Then it will stop. Then another one is set time interval. The set time interval, of course, you know your clock. It's always ticking. So it's just like the ticking is taking place at a specific interval. And what is that interval? It's usually a second. Tick, tick, right? So that is set time interval. You should be ticking after what? A second. Then set time out is basically an action should take place within that time. Then after that time, now that action will stop. So that's what we're going to do here. We want this one to run, right? It's going to run. Then after 2 seconds, it should what? Display none also again. So now we're going to set time out, and this set time out, you can see Visual Studio Code generated it for me. We're going to write the time here. Can you see? So anything that is happening here will take place after the time you write here. So anything inside here. So now let me give you it is always in milliseconds, and we know that 1000 milliseconds make 1 second. So now we want 2 seconds. It's going to be what? 2000 milliseconds. So now it is going to display block. Then after 2 seconds, what should happen? It should display none again. So we say arrow dot again style, right, dot display. Is that not? It should display what? It should display none now. So let's try it and see. Boom. Disappear. Can you see? So it's actually very simple. Display this one block. After 2 seconds, display it none. And remember that check first if there's what, if the input field is not empty, then run this entire code block, right? This code. Then, but if it is empty, what should happen? Then display the arrow we have there that we display it none to be what, block. And after 2 seconds, it should be what, none. So with this now, we are able to add task. Very interesting and very simple, right? So next thing, we're going to see how we're going to edit a task.